For someone who has never approached a private investor, how can they begin to build that pool of private investors from perhaps people that they don't know?
Okay, so this is the big question and the most difficult component of any sort of small business financial scenario, not just filmmaking. Like if you want to go into business and you need to get money from investors, this is the tough part. All right, so obviously it's really helpful if you already have access to a network of rich people. All right. So maybe you have it yourself. Maybe you're fortunate you come from, sort of a community of people who have money. You've never asked them for money before, but now you're going to put together a deck and you're going to ask them in the proper way, in a very professional way, in a courteous, professional way. Remember, you always have to be courteous and professional because remember what I said, they're investing in you. So they need to like you and trust you. All right. So if you have access to some rich people, then that's good. You have a head start. All right. Now, if you don't have access to rich people, which a lot of people don't, because they weren't born into those circles, whatever, you're going to have to find a way in. All right. So there's a couple ways in. All right. The best way in is find somebody in your circle. And I know they're not rich people, but your circle might know somebody who has access to a rich circle. All right. So the first thing is networking within your sort of little circle of people who, you know, you trust or and say, okay, none of us have any money, but does anybody know somebody who does, who is friendly enough to give me the opportunity to at least meet with them, pitch them, very short pitch, 20 minutes, very professional, whatever. Would they do me the favor of letting me pitch them? So you gotta, this is networking, right? So you ask the people who you know if they know somebody at that financial level. So that would be the next level. The toughest level is now you go and you canvass all your friends and family, and nobody knows anybody who is at that level. So now you got to think, okay, how do I get in the door for those kind of people? Now, this happens all the time. And this is why I said you gave me the toughest topic, because this is super tough. All right. This is really, really tough. So what I'm about to tell you, some are you going to laugh at, and some are you going to say, hey, that's called life, that's called business. All right. If you have absolutely no access, no friends, no networking, no connection that can get you in the door into some of those places, like you don't even have a doctor who you go to who you'd feel comfortable pitching, who maybe has some money and some friends who have some money. All right. Then you're going to have to do like what I call start at the ground level stuff. All right. And this, I tell my students this all the time, and some of them laugh and some of them take it seriously. I say, look, if you have this true desire to get a film financed, all right. So first of all, you're gonna have to know how to do it properly. You're gonna have to be a good filmmaker. But now you got to get into those circles. Where do rich people congregate? All right. I'll give you an example. You have to go where they are. Now, you can't stand outside a fancy restaurant and as they're coming out to their cars, you know, follow them to their cars and say, "Hey, you're driving a nice car. You just came from a fancy restaurant. You must have money. Can I pitch you on my film?" You'd get arrested for that. All right? You can't do that. People aren't comfortable with that. How about a country club? Like you can't stand outside a country club where people are paying, very expensive memberships and they generally have money. People who are members of country clubs generally have money. That's how they can afford to be in a country club. So you can't accost them as they're leaving. You can see them going in, you can see them going out, but you can't really approach them. You're not going to follow them, home. But what you could do is you could go and try to get a job at that country club. All right, so let's think you're at a, fancy golf and country club. You're not a golfer, you're not a waiter, you're not something. You're going to have to become something, all right? You need to get into those circles. So let's say you're a young aspiring filmmaker, you just graduated from film circle, you have this vision to make a movie, but you have no money. Then I say go get a job at a country club and you work there for a year or two. This is not going to happen overnight. It's going to take you a couple of years. You be really, really nice to a lot of people. Like let's say you're the a bag boy at a golf club where you're taking the bags out of the club room and putting them on the carts and and cleaning the clubs when the members finish. You get direct access to these members. You talk to them for, I don't know, 5 minutes, 2 minutes, whenever they're finished their round. You clean their clubs. Hi, Mr. Smith, how was your round? How'd it go? A year into that, or 6 months, or whatever it takes, depending on how nice you are, somebody's going to say to you, "What do you do for a living?" Or, I mean, they're assuming you work in the country club, but, who are you? Like, did you go to school? Blah, blah, blah. People get to know you. Even though they're rich, they're friendly, they're nice. And especially if you're courteous to them and nice to them, at some point, there's going to be a time when you could say, "Hey, I know it's not really my place or anything like that, but, I'm not a bag boy for a living. I want to make a film. I'm a filmmaker and I have this great project. And how would you feel about me maybe pitching it to you and just getting your feedback? Because at some point I need to pitch it to people with money. And would you feel comfortable me pitching it to you and giving me your feedback? Or, perhaps maybe taking interest?" That's what it's going to take. Now people say, "I'm not doing that. Like, I'm a filmmaker. I'm not cleaning people's golf clubs. I'm not, going to spend a year of my life working as a bag boy." And I say, guess what? If you weren't lucky enough to be born into those circles, you got to invest time to get into those circles. So maybe my example at a country club's not a good one. So go work in a fancy restaurant. All right. Now, the restaurant isn't as good because you're not going to see the same people over and over. Excuse me, the golf club is way better because you're going to see consistently, week after week, the exact same people, and you can start to develop a relationship. All right.
Yeah, I was
And
going to say that one of the really important things in this example that you used is to see the same people again and again. So if you're working somewhere where it's a new person every single day, you probably won't have the ability to build up those relationships. I had a friend, this was now probably 10 years ago, where he worked at an Odeon cinema here in London, and he worked at the Leicester Square one. And because he was working there, he was working there during all the premieres of all the films, and was therefore getting to meet all the producers, the executive producers, and actually have really short conversations with them, and eventually started to build a relationship with them. So it's definitely something that you can do. And I think perhaps for the filmmakers here who are going, I don't want to do something that's completely separate to film, perhaps there is something that you can get a job in where there are high net worth individuals that's more closely related to the film industry as well, that they could be more interested in. But yeah, it's
give,
it's
gi-
definitely great advice.
what? I love your idea, but give me an example of that. Honestly, give me one example. This is, you are not the first person to ask me this question. You're probably the 500th person. How do I start networking with high net worth individuals? And I'm telling you, I have thought of a canvas, gone through all the different scenarios. You got to go where the money is, and sometimes, like, that's called life. Okay, some people are born into it and have a better opportunity. They just have a head start. Some aren't. If you're not lucky enough to, say, be born into those circles, then you have to get into them, and you have to invest some time and energy, and to do what you weren't lucky enough to be born into. It's the way it is. Now, what? But by the way, once you get in there and you do a good job and you get a good name, you have that forever.
Yeah, absolutely. I
So
think, it really definitely sounds like, these private investors, the way to get to them is really not by pitching your film, but in a way by showing and pitching yourself at the start, and that it really has to start off with you.
it's all
Um,
about that. It's 100% about that. If they like you, they have no clue whether you're a good filmmaker or not. They're not going to know that until after your film is made. They're not going to know if you're a good person, but they're going to know if they like you or not. They're going to know if you're courteous, if you're professional, if you treated them well, if they like you. There's chemistry. It's all about that. It's 100% about that.